This video is to help parents and students and even teachers to be able to go through the MAP testing results, both from this fall and previous sessions, and to understand better the two different reports which were handed out during the parent-student conferences. These are the two different reports right here. Student goal setting worksheet and the student progress report. I'll go through both of these and be able to break down a few of these things. My name is Russ Whismore. I am the math and English teacher at the middle school and the coordinator for the MAP testing. And so let's start with the student goal setting worksheet. The purpose of the goal setting worksheet, which is the exact one that we handed out last year, it compares the last three MAP tests, specifically from fall of last year, 2016, last spring, and then again the most recent one in October and September and October. And it shows the relative strengths and challenge areas in each area, both math, reading, all of math, reading, and the language. So let's take a look at one of these. Again, if you were here last year, you will recognize the layout of this. So all the information that you see here has all three categories, both math, reading, and language usage. Let's focus on the two different sections here and talk about what they mean. First off, I just want to make a clarification. You'll notice the dates down here seem to be a little bit strange. It seems to indicate fall 17, winter, and summer 17, which we do not do testing there, spring 17, and then fall 18. It almost seems like it's out of sync. Why do we have fall 17 before spring 17? Well, the way that MAP has their system set up, fall 17 and spring 17 are all within the same calendar year that ends in 2017, or specifically the summer of 2017. Although we only do the fall and the spring. So where it says fall 17 and spring 17 side by side, it really means both the fall and spring testings within the 2016-17 year. Thus, where it says fall 18, that's actually the most recent test which we did, even though it's 2017. So what you will see are three different scores there. And these are the most recent ones, obviously, the one from last fall, last spring, and this fall. And the scores are indicative of where the student is, relatively speaking, on sort of the spectrum of the mathematical understanding. And this dashed line, 227, is a goal which MAP sets based on the information that it has from the 5 million students that are taking this similar type of test across the country, is sort of setting the goal. So from fall 2016, the goal would have been by 2017 to have reached this goal. And this is actually a little bit of an unusual pattern because it goes from 220 to 232 and keeps going up. Normally, you will find something like this kind of a pattern where it starts in the fall and goes up in the spring and then has a slight regression coming into the next fall, which makes sense because of the summertime and the lack of instructional time that the students have. But in this case, the student continued to progress. It's not necessarily completely unusual. It's not a typical pattern to some extent. So that helps to see the progress that the student is making. Specifically, when you look at this particular section next to it, this has a breakdown of all three sections, from fall to spring to fall. And within each of the different categories, you'll notice a range of numbers. At the top, this is the overall score which the student received. And then in each of the different sections of that, in this case mathematics, there is a range with sort of within that category where the student falls. Now you'll notice a couple that are highlighted yellow, green, and some that are not. The ones that are highlighted green, for example right here last spring or this fall within the real and not complex number systems, that indicates a relative strength for the student compared to the overall score. You notice that this is 246 to 260. The overall score was 241, so that does indeed seem to be above what the average score was for the student. Any yellow highlighting indicates a potential area of challenge for the student relative to the overall score. Again, in this case, there seemed to be possibly 2 compared to 241. And so those are just some ideas to keep in mind for both the students, parents, as well as the teachers as moving forward, some ways to be able to reinforce. You'll notice over here in the last fall, everything seemed to be pretty well balanced in terms of their understanding. It's, different students will progress sometimes in certain areas quicker than in others. And remember that this is still one data point of what is going on within the student's education. But it does give us a glimpse sometimes of maybe where there's some misunderstandings or where they could be reinforced. For example, if you take a look at this one here, statistics and probability, they actually slightly went up between the fall and the spring. However, because the overall amount went up substantially, this is now considered perhaps a area that can be bolstered or strengthened for the student. Again, these are just one data point, but it is a good way to be able to help see what is going on with the students within that. And you'll see the same thing here. Obviously, within the reading section, you have an additional information which you can check in with your English teacher, be that Mr. Pruce or Ms. Headland, about the Lexile range, where they are within that bit of information. And again, you have the language information for that. So that's how you're able to read essentially these particular, the goal setting worksheets. And these are what we use within class, both as an entire class and also individually, to help be able to set goals for the students. The second that we have is the student progress report. This is a new one that we are introducing this year. And it's helpful because since this is our third year with MAP, we now have enough information that it starts to make sense and you can be able to see progress over time. So this is indeed a line graph, growth progression over time, which includes charts of all the MAP results since the student began the testing. So even from the lower school, those numbers will have come forward, at least certain of those numbers. So let's take a look at this one. This is the exact same data from, as you saw with the other one. However, it's presented differently. It has some different information. It will be front and back of this, but let's take a look at the two different parts of this one. First off, we have the bar graph, or the line graph, I should say. So this has the exact same information. Notice the student here is listed in blue. So this has the exact same information, but even further back. Notice we started here back at fall 16. This is the one strange part about the setup, the glitch within their system, is that this does represent, when it says fall 16, that was last fall. Notice it goes to fall 17, and that's where we are right now. These are the 3 data points that we had from the previous report, but it will also go further back. So this is even the previous spring. And you notice that from the spring to the fall, that was the indicator that I talked about, where sometimes it goes down during the summertime. And indeed, this is a typical pattern for that. So this is just a visual in terms of where the student is. You notice where it says the norm grade level mean. This here is the national norms based on, as I mentioned, the 5 million students that are taking this test. And so it is normed according to the grade level and adjusts accordingly throughout time. So you can see here that the student is above the norms, and you'll notice in a moment exactly how far above when we look at the box to the right. 2 other things that are important here. One is a projection. Again, this is the projection that MAP does in terms of where the student might expect to go in future testing cycles. So you can see this is what the expectation would be going in towards next fall, that the student would be able to reach up to about right here. Again, it's a goal, and what we use sometimes to encourage the kids and help the kids in working towards that. The second, you will also notice down below, there is a listing here that states within the different categories about where they are relative to the mean. So for example, high average within both algebra, geometry, and then high compared to the real and complex number systems and statistics and probability. You'll see more of that over here on the chart to the right. This has a listing of every single test that the student has taken since coming to school. You'll notice it started back in grade 5. But there are no growth projections down here because of the fact that it's taken a year for the student to do that. So you notice that the projection, which we saw on the previous page, was that dashed line, and this was the actual growth that the student showed over the course of that year. The bold numbers are the actual score which the student has got, and the range here from, for example, 211 to 217, that's the standard error, sort of like standard deviation for those of you that are familiar with statistical terms. So this is approximately the range that the student is at. And this over here to the right is the percentile range. Again, this is a comparison with the national norms and where the child lies within that range. In this case, is gone from the 57th percentile to the 56th, and then the very large jump here has pushed the student up to the 87th percentile. So this is true for all of the different categories. Reading, again, the Lexile range down here, and the information that is relevant to the student again on all of these different things. You'll notice that the language usage only starts in the 6th grade because those tests are not given at the lower school. So this will only reflect the last 3. Or if you are a brand new 6th grade student, you will only have 1 data point here as you see that. So if you have any questions about these, please don't hesitate to contact your English teacher. Again, Ms. Headland or Mr. Pruss, or your math teachers, myself or Madame Pluche, to discuss more about your child specifically and even ways that we can support you and your student in their learning.